got some NFL news today,
We
actually.
do.
The Buffalo Bills. Big
Everybody's
time
favorite
news.
team.
Yes, they've extended Sean McDermott till 2027 and
Mhm.
GM Brandon Bean. And the reason I bring this up because our next guest, one of our favorites, is joining us right now, Stephen Psihogios of NorthStar Bets. He's our resident Buffalo Bills fan, not only a Bruins fan, but a Bills fan.
Mhm.
Your thoughts on this deal here, this extension for your boy Sean McDermott?
It's a very difficult spot to be in for a Bills fan because you respect McDermott, what he's done for the team, where he's brought them, but at the same time, I would really like to have an offensive-minded head coach to really unlock Josh Allen. I think McDermott is a great leader of men, like one of these big rah-rah guys, like you can really get behind them, but when it comes to offensive creativity, yeah, I could see better somewhere
He's not
else.
that guy. He's not that guy, bro.
No.
Stevie, does this now mean that Stephon Diggs is going to be more happier now that there's some clarity with the head coaching thing? Because he really wants to be involved now. Does you think that drama has now
I
subsided?
think I think it's a Diggs Allen problem,
I don't know, but
right?
Stephon
Stevie, you know better than us.
But Diggs has made it very
I
clear
think
he
it's a
wants to be a
Diggs
part of the
McDermott.
offensive, the offensive game planning, right? So
Right, true.
I think it's a Diggs McDermott problem.
Mhm.
Like the offense once Dayball left, I thought was pretty stale last year. Ken Dorsey, it started well, but things really got stale quickly. Maybe that had to do with Gabe Davis's ankle injury that was lingering all throughout last year, and not having a number
Mhm.
two to really lean on, even if Davis isn't a high end number two. I think the Buffalo just they lacked the creativity you'd like to see from a team that has a quarterback of Josh Allen's talent. So that's where I have issue with keeping McDermott, is that how much of this offensive success was tied to McDermott's creativity, which I think is very little, versus what Dayball's creativity was, which what I think is now a lot. So it's I don't think this clears anything up on the Diggs front. I think that's either already been cleared up or that's still lingering right now.
I mean, you mentioned it. You thought the Bills should get an offensive coach. You looked in Miami, and both times the Dolphins played, or sorry, not both times, three times the Dolphins played the Bills this past season. Mike McDaniel seemed to outcoach Sean McDermott because he's just so much more creative on the offensive side of the ball. You mentioned the generational talent that Josh Allen is at quarterback, but yet they continue to ride out with Sean McDermott, a guy who's never been able to build a running game in Buffalo. The defense has been it's been good, but it's never been
They were
elite,
banged up
right?
last year,
They
though.
were banged up. So what's with the sense of loyalty towards Sean McDermott? Just because the Bills now are back to relevancy after years of being a team that people forgot about?
I think so. I think a lot of the guys like McDermott. I think Diggs might be the one exception. Like, I think the rest of that locker room really likes Sean McDermott. I know they had a spat at the beginning of OTAs and they kind of got over it pretty quickly. So I don't know how much of that is still lingering, but I'm pretty sure like the rest of the team really likes him. And it's hard not to. Like, as me as a fan, I like him. I see why the Bills like him. But also as a fan, I think about it. I'm like, is this really the best guy to get this team to the championship, which is why I'm watching? And I don't think that's a yes. If you were to ask me that question, I'd say no.
Are you still leaning towards the Bills winning the AFC East at plus 120 and NorthStar Bets, or my New York Jets, who I'm actually not a fan of? Maybe this year they have Aaron Rodgers. Plus
I'm not in on the
250.
Jets. Like a 39-year-old quarterback, I just think that's a recipe for disappointment for Jets fans, if I'm being honest. Like, how many of those guys are kicking around the league? Tom Brady, he's a one of one. So I'll take the Bills at plus money to win the division.
Stevie, I want to pose something to you. So Albert, we were talking about the NFL before we went on air, and he's asking us, oh, if we're excited for the season and stuff like that. And he's like, I have no stress, no worries, because I don't have a favorite team in the NFL. I'm just a fan of every
I
Sunday.
just cheer for the teams I'm betting on.
Are
That's it.
you? Is that a valid take to be a football fan? Do you have to have allegiance to a certain team,
No.
or can you just be a fan of the entire league in general?
Well, like as a Bills fan, if I didn't cheer for any team, I would be saved so much stress and so much
But
disappointment.
that's the whole
So
part of that's what makes it so fun being a fan, though.
it is the fun part. Like those are feelings that Albert will never feel, right? Like Albert will never feel the 13 seconds. He'll never feel like all this heartbreak that I've had to endure, which I maybe I look back now and say it's a good thing because there's no other way to justify it other than just saying, man, that was a missed opportunity that maybe we'll never get a chance to rectify. But as a fan, you do feel these certain emotions. You just wait for that one day and hope that you eventually win a title. But it could, like, we should have this conversation when I'm like 85 years old. And if the Bills still haven't won a Super Bowl, I'll say, Albert, I should have been on your team the entire time, man. What a waste of my life.
Dude, I'm not feeling it in the NFL. I have been feeling it in the NHL for a long time as a Leafs fan. I also support Tottenham Hotspur in the Premier League. I mean, I don't see trophies, right? I saw the Raptors do it. That's about it. Maybe I should start just watching the Argos and hopefully they just, run the gauntlet once again.
Run the back-to-back train.
You never know. Okay, let's talk some hockey. If you're a GM and you're looking for a top free agent this offseason and you need someone to let's say light the lamp a little bit. Who are you looking at? Who would you take off the board?
This is not like a great class for that, because you could argue that Tyler Bertuzzi is the best goal scorer in this class, and I do not put him in the upper echelon of goal scoring. I mean, his best stretch came with Boston during the playoffs, and at the end of the season, he was on fire. But really, there's a lot of has-beens in guys like Tarasenko, who maybe he's still got it left, or hey, maybe 4 shoulder surgeries have really caught up to this guy and he just isn't the same player. Because you look at the shot volume and that really took a big turn for the worse last year. So I would say if you're looking for goals, Bertuzzi's your guy. But I already know, because of how weak this free agency class is, just as far as like a top being not very top heavy, these guys are all going to get pushed up and overpaid. It's going to be ugly. If you're a team, and if you're a fan of a team and your team does nothing on July 1st, you should celebrate.
What do you think Patrick Kane has left?
Very little. Like, I would say the best case scenario is he scores 70 points next year and stays healthy. Like, I just don't see him getting back to a 90, 100 point pace at this stage of his career. Like, he's got the hip issues now that he's getting rectified. I'm sure he'll get the surgery or the procedure or whatever it is, and then he'll feel better. You'll hear the reports, I haven't felt this good in years. But at the same time, you got to look at the guy's age. He's like 34, 35 years old. Expecting him to be a 90 plus 100 point guy is just not realistic at this point. So I'd say you're probably getting an average to good second line winger in Patrick Kane.
Not bad.
You know what this free agency class kind of reminds me of? Like 2016 when Milan Lucic got a big deal because it wasn't a very good class. Of course, Canucks signed Louis Eriksson, that,
David Backes,
right?
Guys.
But the trade market is very interesting this summer. The Calgary Flames, it seems like they just keep on adding players to that list because nobody wants to stay in Calgary. Noah Hannafin, now Tyler Toffoli. Why do you think dudes just don't want to play in Calgary, Stevie?
I think a lot of it was Daryl Sutter, just fatigue from playing under that guy for so many years. I really do think he wasn't even there that long, but I think playing under a coach like Sutter, who's very strict and very hard on his players, takes a toll on a player. And you start having these bad associations with the organization, especially one that, hey, Calgary isn't Florida. It isn't Vegas, right? It isn't in one of these nice year-round weather spots. So I think that's really, it's a combination of things, of guys just wanting to test the market to see what they can get elsewhere, and also not really feeling like Calgary did right by them over these last couple of years. Because while the Flames had one really good year under Sutter, I think we saw how quickly that candle can burn and how it affects the players in that locker room.
Man, you got to feel for Craig Conroy and Ryan Huska, man. You got Lindholm, Noah Hannafin, Mikael Backlund, and Tyler Toffoli, who kind of won out of Calgary right now. It's a difficult job. Let's talk about the draft. You have an article up on NorthStarBets.ca regarding the NHL draft, We just finished the NBA draft. Nothing too surprising happened there, but there is money to be made if betting these drafts. I've never done it, but how do you go about doing that? And tell us some of your leans.
So what I've done, and if you go over to NorthStarBets.ca and you check out the article, you'll see a list that I've compiled of all the over-unders on the pick lines that we have for the players available. There's like 27 players. It's the selection over at NorthStar Bets is great for draft markets in particular. So when you go through the list and you go up and down, I've also included a column that has the average draft position that I've compiled using 7 different mock drafts, including a bunch of big ones in the industry, not just mock drafts, but rankings from guys like Bob McKenzie, Craig Budden, a lot of the more prominent hockey prospect evaluators. So what that allows you to do is you can see where they're being ranked in these 7 different services and compare it to their over-under line, and then go from there and see where there's a bit of a gap between the two. One guy in particular, there was a big gap on Nate Danielson. He opened up at a 9.5 line, and I smashed the over on that because when you looked at the mock draft average, he was mocked going around pick 16.7, like it was an 8-pick gap. Since then, he's moved to 11.5, but if you bet the over on that, it's at plus 125. There's still like a 4.5 or 4.1 pick difference between Danielson and his mock draft average. So that's one pick in particular I really like.
Love that. You going to bet the draft?
I'm not big on betting the draft, to be honest with you guys. You never know when the trades be involved and stuff. I stay away from it. But I am looking at your list like right now, Stevie, and it is very impressive. I do think that we know it's the Connor Bedard show. It looks like Adam Fantilli is going to go second overall. But after that, there's a whole bunch of different things to be made. Will Smith, Leo Carlson. There's a whole bunch of different numbers. Do you see anybody on this list, though, that could really be a late riser, to, challenge to go second or third overall potentially in the top 3?
The only guy I think is Michkov, and that's because there's so much potential with that player. Yeah, there's a lot of buzz, and right now it's negative. It's him falling in the draft, but sometimes these GMs they pull these tactics where they start pushing a guy down the list, or they purposely ignore them and don't really include them because they really like the player. And you see it all the time in NFL, NHL. Remember last year in the NFL draft, just to use this as an example, a guy like Malik Willis was getting like top 10 buzz. He didn't end up going until the 3rd round.
Exactly.
So a lot of times you see buzz around certain players that's not necessarily accurate. So Michkov is one of those guys who everything we've seen on the ice, you just strip away all the off-ice stuff, it should be going probably number 2 overall in this draft ahead of Fantilli. But because of the Russia situation, because of his contract with the KHL, he wouldn't be able to play here for 3 years. There's some pause around Michkov, but just from a pure talent standpoint, he's probably the second best player in this draft. So that's why I could see him potentially going higher than expected.
Yeah, Michkov plus 2,500 at NorthStar Bets to go second overall. Check, please. Oh, a little sprinkle on that for sure. Stevie, you're the best, buddy. Have a good weekend, and let's chat soon. And we got to get you in the studio, man. I keep saying it, but it's got to happen.
Sounds good. You let me know when. I'll be down there.
All right, we're going to chat soon. We'll talk some NHL, but NFL's coming up. That's where the money is right now. Okay, Stevie, thanks so much, buddy.